Hello plant lovers, welcome. Today we are going to be doing some maintenance on an air layering project that I've been doing with this Monstera deliciosa. I'm hoping to get this big unruly branch rooted before I cut her off of her big beautiful mama. And so I've got all my materials laid out here. I like to set something down below just so I don't make a huge mess with the moss, which is already moistened. Mostly water, a little bit of Super Thrive. I like to have a clip available that helps it ease the process of getting it all wrapped back up. So we're going to open these up and see how they're doing and if there's anything that they need. All right, so the intention behind this project is to get these aerial roots to branch out so that they've got some nice well-established roots before we cut this whole limb off of the mother plant. And if you keep the right levels of moisture in here and a little bit of airflow, then typically you get some really nice healthy roots. So let's see how they're doing. This has been going on about 3 weeks now that I've been doing this project, and I've only opened it up entirely like this maybe twice. But I do peel open the cellophane every so often and check to see that there's no rot going on. So we have a lot of really healthy new root growth. Enough so to the point that it was kind of bursting out of the moss. So I'm going to get some new moist moss in here and give it a good squeeze. We definitely don't want it to be too soggy or wet, otherwise it is likely to rot. And then I'll just wrap this back around. There's not much that needs to be done here. If it had any rot going on, then I would probably leave it open for a little while and try to pull the rotten moss off and put some fresh stuff in, but it looks really healthy. So anywhere that I see exposed root that's trying to grow, I make sure that it's really surrounded with the moss. You can see this little root kind of hanging out there. I'm just going to make sure to bunch some moss around it. Cellophane is nice because it kind of sticks to itself while you're working with it so that it doesn't fall off as readily. Although I do like to use my cute little clip that hopes to hold everything together while I get the Velcro on. This is just some regular old plant Velcro. And then it's okay to leave some kind of gaps for air to escape. But you just don't want to leave too much because you want it to stay moist. So last time I had checked on these, they were a little bit dry and felt like we were kind of starting over. So this one's got like maybe a little air pocket at the top. So let's take a look at this one. It's actually good. You see these little baby roots growing there. So I'm just going to grab some fresh moist moss. And really make sure to surround the top of these ones. They're really growing up. So I'm going to put the moss up on top of them. And just maybe try to get a little bit tighter around the edges with this wrap so that it doesn't dry out too much. This one's kind of a funky angle. A little bit harder to get it to be really tight. Should do the trick. It's not the prettiest thing in the time being on your plant, but it's such a great way to make sure that you've got healthy roots established before you cut from the plant. see a lot of people putting a lot of time and energy into water propagations, and unfortunately they just have the probability to rot, especially with your more, you know, expensive, hard to find plants like an albo. This is a really great option. Leaves are kind of in the way there. Pardon me, miss. This one's dry, so I didn't quite wrap that one tight enough and the root is dried out. It's okay. These Monstera deliciosa, especially their aerial roots, are pretty hardy. I have a couple other projects that I'm going to hop over to in this same video that have more delicate roots, and then you got to be a lot more careful for them drying out. If they dry out and they're singed, you basically just cut them off and start all over again, whereas these big hardy roots are a little bit more forgiving. So I'm just really going to bunch that up tightly up against that root, wrap around. Okay, we're gonna hop over into another, what I would classify as an air layering project here. This is a silver sword philodendron that I got, and it was really healthy, but it was kind of just like tipped horizontally like that. And I wanted to try to train it up this moss pole. I really like these clear backed moss poles. They stay moist pretty readily and they're pretty sturdy. So I keep this wrapped up, start to unravel this a little bit. The idea is that these stalks were pretty sturdy. They're almost a centimeter and they're really hardy. And they've got little aerial roots coming out of the back of each of them. And there's no way to press that all the way up against the moss pole. So if you've got a plant and you're thinking about training it up a moss pole, I think a lot of times what I see is people trying to really like press it up against the pole so that it roots, and that makes sense, but sometimes that damages the plant. And so what you can do is just ball up a bunch of moss like that and put it in between the base of the pole and the little aerial roots. And I've got a couple that are way back in here. I can't get them to show up on camera, but just to paint the picture for you, they start way over here and they're already rooting into that moss that's like 2 or 3 inches away from the moss pole. And so the bridge is working. And I do think it's helpful to keep this covered. You don't want to overwater the plant by overwatering the moss. So if you can just get it moist and then leave it that way and kind of wrap it up, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does retain some of that moisture. This plant has stayed really happy, and I'm noticing roots that are already making their way into the pole. I've also got something similar going on with this Cebu Blue pothos. So this is a pretty young plant, but even still, I'm noticing on the bottom of these tiny little vines that there are some aerial roots coming out. And I figured why not encourage them to grow so that eventually, I just got this plant. I won't repot it for a little while. I might just have some really nice roots so that I can create a moss pole behind it and already have some nice long roots to train into a pole. Similar, but a little bit different, I've got this gorgeous Scindapsus, and she was starting to get, like, not too leggy, but she's got this one long vine that's growing up here. And so I am not training her into this pole with the intention to have her stay there. I just want to air layer her and then eventually get the mother plant to grow up that same pole. So for now, I've just got each of her little aerial roots nicely tucked into moss that gets moistened every day or every other day, depending on how it feels. And eventually I will trim this off down here and get each of those rooted into a new plant. So that is most of my air layering projects for today. I've got a Cissus discolor or tapestry vine that has had a lot of shock with me trying to train her onto this pole, but I think we're getting there. And then I've also got one of these is a Mican philodendron, one of them's a heartleaf. Also a little bit shocked after the move, but stay tuned. Hopefully they will acclimate. Got a bunch of little babies that I am keeping in this nice humid corner. These are mostly going to be terrarium plants. And this little macrophilia is likely going to go into a kokedama style moss ball. And I think that's going to be a really neat little tiny display. Happy growing, everybody!